Hi everyone, Kate Berkner here today with Dr. Tom Phelan, author and creator of 123 Magic and the author of The Manager Mom Epidemic. Dr. Phelan, welcome.
Good morning, Kay.
How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good, Good,
glad to hear it. So today we are going to be talking about one of our most popular topics, and that is handling tantrums. Obviously, the word tantrum is enough to make most parents cringe, especially if you have a younger child. And we often get questions from parents about kids having tantrums. So let's just start with Dr. Phelan. How much is too much? Like, what is a normal kind of frequency for tantrums in kids?
Well, I can give you some statistics. 2 and 3-year-olds, 20% of them will tantrum daily. So that's fairly normal. And a lot of them will go more than that. The age range for tantrums is about 1.5 years to up to about age 5. That's sort of the normal age. But if we get kids, the 4.5, 5, and 6 and 7, and they're still continuing to tantrum, then we start getting concerned.
Got it. So in the book, you say that there are 3 main reasons that children have tantrums. Can you share with us what those 3 reasons are?
Yeah, my reasons are real simple. You see some people say the reason is they're looking for power, they're looking for attention, they're looking for this. I think we got to keep it simple. They want a thing. Okay, it could be a donut in the morning, something like that. They want an activity, maybe to use your iPad 5 minutes before dinner, or they don't want an activity. That's the third one, such as going to bed. So this is like real simple, and they're not getting what they want, or we're asking them to do something that they don't want to do. And, it hits the fan.
Absolutely. And I think, as a parent in the thick of it, it can often feel like, I don't even know, my kid has a tantrum about food. They have a tantrum about playtime. They have a tantrum about bath time. They have a tantrum about bedtime. And I think those 3 reasons really help to kind of distill it down to some very understandable causes.
Right. Bath time, for example, is an activity they don't want to do. Transitioning is a big thing too. They don't want to leave here and go there. It's an activity they don't want to do. But as a parent, you are stuck with the responsibility for getting them to do those things. So that's where the problem comes from.
Absolutely. Well, and if you think about it, as an adult, there are things that we don't want to do either, right?
That's right. Yeah, and you ask about the frequency of tantrums. I don't know about the frequency of tantrums in adults. Haven't seen those data, but it's not like they all go away.
Absolutely. And one of the kind of buzzwords that's been popping up lately is emotional regulation and emotional dysregulation. And basically emotional dysregulation is a tantrum, right?
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's one big example of it, maybe the biggest example. But and if you get into emotional dysregulation and emotional, that it can get a little confusing some of the time. Just with the word meltdown, a lot of people use. That's a easy to understand thing. Some people describe it as a kid looks like they're losing their mind, which they're not. They're really very goal directed.
They either want a thing, they want to do a thing, or they don't want to do a thing. That's what they're looking to do. So in the book, you talk about B.A.D syndrome in adults, B.A.D, and how that can actually make tantrums worse. Can you tell us what B.A.D syndrome is and how it can actually make tantrums worse and not better?
Yeah, the B.A.D is the bewildered, agitated, and defaulting to reasoning. And what I'm talking about is a parent's reaction to a tantrum. So imagine a situation where a kid is tantruming. It's very important how the parent reacts to it. And a lot of times parents are surprised. You don't want to be surprised by your kid's tantrum. So you're bewildered. And then next, because you're surprised, you're agitated. What am I going to do about this? This is terrible, etc. And then the third thing, which is one of the worst things you can do with a tantruming child, is you default to reason. Oh, come on, honey, think about this and think about this and all that. And you beg and you plead and you whimper. You add all that up, you reinforce the tantrum because the child feels like either I'm about to get my way. B.A.D gives them hope that they're going to get their way, or at least it gives them effective revenge for you not giving them what they want. So we tell parents, you got 10 seconds to make up your mind and not get into the B.A.D syndrome. Make up your mind what you're going to do.
All right, so then let's break down B.A.D syndrome and talk about how not to do each of those things. So B for bewildered, right? You say that parents are bewildered when their child starts to have a tantrum. What is the answer or the solution here?
The answer is don't be surprised. And those three things we talked about before are cues. A request is a cue. A request from a child, can I play with your iPad or can I have a donut, is a cue that, oh, well, okay, this is a situation I have to handle well. So that's a cue, so you're not surprised. And then you got your 10-second rule, so you're going to handle it, reasonably well, but very quickly.
Right. So then for A, agitated, like parents, I know that if I can sense a tantrum coming on as a parent, I'm already sort of in this like defensive state, right? Like it's just natural to be like, okay, I know what's coming here. So what can parents do to not get into that agitated frame of mind or behavior?
You want to think calm and decisive. Okay, so if I'm not surprised, that's going to help a lot. Kids do have tantrums. A lot of times, one of the things that parents have reacted very well to when I've told them is tantrums are a response to good parenting. They're not, the kid's not out of control. This is going to happen. The child is going to have tantrums periodically. It's because you did something well. You were setting limits. So if we get you out of the surprise mode, we get you to think calm and decisive. Taking a deep breath is a good thing to do. And then the other thing is knowing what you're going to do right at that moment, like stop talking, break eye contact, and so on, also helps you because you are being decisive in doing something. The worst thing to do is to not have any idea what you're doing and to show that to the child. That's murder. You might as well just give them what they want and get it over with.
Absolutely. So it's, you talk about that request from the child being sort of an indicator, or when it comes to habit building, if you will, because what you're doing as a parent in this situation is you want to build a habit of being able to respond in a calm and decisive way. So that child's request is almost a trigger, so that in your head, you should be thinking, okay, if I'm going to deny this request, before I even say it, do I know what my next few steps are going to be when they have a disproportionate reaction to me saying no?
Exactly. I'm battle tested and I'm ready for them.
All right. So D, defaulting to reasoning. I know this one can be hard, especially when kids get older. My 6-year-old said to me in the car the other day, she goes, Mom, do you think my life has ever been fair? Of course, my instinct is to be like, of course your life's not fair. You're 6, your life is never going to be fair, and no one's life is ever going to be fair. And that obviously is not a useful response in that situation, because she's not actually talking about the overall fairness of life, right? She is upset because I told her that I wouldn't buy her paint markers at the store. So what should parents do instead of defaulting to reasoning and defaulting to over talking in this situation?
Right. You can, we say, you're allowed one explanation if you think it has a snowball's chance and where of working. But if it doesn't, don't even try it. But the natural tendency is to default to reason, is to explain that you don't give the boy the iPad right before dinner. He says, I never get anything. So you, just like your daughter said, you never get anything. We just went to the pool. We just did this. We did this, that. That's defaulting to reasoning. And what you're saying is perfectly logical, but it makes the situation worse. So you never talk to a tantruming child is one of my basic rules. So instead of defaulting to reasoning, you're going to be calm. So what are you going to do? Well, you increase the physical distance, break eye contact. What some parents do is they say, tantrums are for the bedroom, and I want you to go to your room and when you're finished, then we'll, carry on from there. But one of the last things you do is what often feels like the most reasonable and logical thing to do, and that's reason, and that is extremely destructive, because there's two things. There's what you're saying, the words you're saying, and then there's your tone of voice, and your tone of voice is what's ruining the situation.
Absolutely. Because if you've gotten to that point, you're probably frustrated, you're probably a little irritated, and you're certainly not feeling calm and decisive at that point.
No.
All right, so those are the things that we shouldn't be doing and what we should do instead. You also talk about there are 2 things that parents can do before a child's tantrum starts, and there are two things that parents can do after a child has a tantrum. Can we discuss what are two things that parents can or should be doing before the tantrum starts to either head it off or deal with it in a calm and decisive way?
Yeah, we've already talked about one of these a little bit. The first thing you can do, and this is, remember, it's mention a child request. Okay, so it's going to be a child request. The first thing you can do is give them what they want, if it's at all reasonable to do. So if the kid says a donut 5 minutes before dinner, it's not reasonable. If the child says, I want to borrow your iPad 10 minutes before dinner, that could be possible. And the reason I mention that is sometimes we parents, you're having a long day, you're busy, you're in a bad mood, the kid's been bugging you, and now they come along and they're bugging you again with a request. And so you, I don't want to give you that, it's what I call a bad mood veto. And it sets up a bad situation because you have mixed feelings about saying no. They know that you have mixed feelings, that they could have this thing. And so they give you a hard time, and it sets up a bit. So just give it to them. If it's 3:30 in the afternoon, they say, can I have a donut? Here, be my guest. Here's one. Go enjoy it. And that kind of thing. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, if you decide, so if you give them what they want, no problem. Everything's fine. If you don't want to give them what they want, do a good veto. A good veto is short, it's calm, it has one explanation if necessary, and it's followed by silence. And so that's this second preventive thing. Remember, they haven't blown up yet. And good vetoes prevent a lot of tantrums. A weak veto tells the kid, maybe you can, they can get to you, and push you over the edge here. But a good veto, a lot of times, slams the door. That's the end of it.
And so when a parent does a good veto, one of the things that I've heard some people talk about is trying to redirect. So is a good veto always going to be, nope, not right now? Or could a good veto also be, you know what, we don't have donuts right before dinner, but we could maybe have dessert afterwards. We'll see how things go.
Yeah, you could certainly do it. And a lot of people are big fans of distraction and redirection. And I think especially with the little kids. So if you get 2 and 3-year-olds and so on, and you use distraction, redirection, it works. But you have to be ready for if it doesn't work. And you're not going to keep talking and so on. So if it doesn't work. And the other thing is, when kids get to be 4 and 5 and you try distraction, sometimes it'll make them more angry because they know what you're doing.
They've caught on. Yeah. Okay. All right. So assuming that we've tried those things and they have not prevented the tantrum, and our child has started to have a tantrum, what are the two things that parents should do once a tantrum has started?
Yeah, the first one is what I call check out. So what you're going to do is you're not going to talk to them, and you're going to, break contact some way, no eye contact. The child could go to the room to finish the tantrum. A trick I used to use when my son would tantrum in a grocery store is I'd turn the cart around and I'd push it from the front. So he's going the other way, he's not looking at me. And that's a way of breaking contact as well. So and it's hard to do because you want to talk to them, especially in public. You're embarrassed and you want to get them to quiet down. But the first thing to do is to do some form of checkout. And remember, you got 10 seconds to decide what kind of checkout you're going to do. So you have to be ready for it.
Absolutely. And what would you say to parents who are concerned that that type of checking out is not emotionally good for their child?
Yeah, what I would say to them is, in these situations, I don't think that is the case. In these situations, we have the shoe on the wrong foot. You have a parent and you have a child, and that child's tantruming, and you say, who's the most upset? Let me tell you something. The kid's fine. They'll get over it in 5 minutes. I guarantee you. You won't get over it until 3 hours are up. So the person who needs the help is the parent, not the child. They don't need emotional support. No, they need to learn how to not tantrum. They don't need hugs. Some people like to give them hugs. I feel real uncomfortable with that kind of thing. But think about it. The person that's being traumatized during a tantrum is not the child, it's the parent.
Yeah, because really the tantrum it's an expression of feeling, right? It's an externalization of the frustration that you learn to internalize as an adult, right? Like we all have plenty of tantrums inside our heads, and we don't express those things out loud because we've learned to deal with those feelings and cope with those emotions. So tantrum is really just a child kind of externalizing a frustration, right?
Yeah, but I think it's so extreme that it's hard not to take it real seriously because the look on the face is like the world is ending, and you feel like the cruelest person in the world. So that's why we say tantrums are normal. So this percentage of preschoolers are going to have tantrums on a regular basis, and one of your jobs, which is really hard. I mean, and if adult reacted that way, you'd be really, really upset. You get more used to it with kids, but it still upsets the parent because it is so extreme and so illogical. But you got to remember, who's being traumatized? I am, the parent, not the child.
Got it. Terrific. All right. So we are creating a little bit of either physical distance or, if you're in the grocery store and aren't able to walk away from your child, sort of breaking eye contact, turning the cart around, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And so then what's the other thing that we do after a child has a tantrum?
The other thing you can do is you can consequence the tantrum. And a lot of times that mixes in with the separation. So the consequence could be, rest period or timeout. And a lot of people, again, feel that that's not appropriate. The child's fine. I can guarantee you they're fine. You don't talk to them. You can take them back out to the car if you're in the store and then come back in the store after the tantrum is over. But the fourth thing really is some version of consequence. You don't always need to do anything. If you have a little child and they're 3 years old and so on, and they tantrum and you leave the store, or when you leave the store, then you're in the car, you're not going to do a timeout when you get home. I mean, that's going to be the end of the thing. But with older kids, if they break something or whatever, with older kids, 7, 8, 9, say, well, for every minute you tantrum, there's going to be a minute earlier bedtime or a fine grounding chore or whatever it is. And sometimes that's helpful if it's done, reasonably calmly by the parent.
Absolutely. And I think that rest period is a good opportunity for the child to sort of get that emotion out and come kind of back to center for themselves. So if a child is having a tantrum, this is sort of a consequence and counting question, right? If my kid starts to have a tantrum, do they get counted 1, 2, 3 for that? Or is that kind of an automatic 3 and they're sent straight to their timeout space?
It can be either one. And so if a child, say, really blows up and they throw something at you, okay, well, that's going to be an automatic and so on. If they're just sort of warming up, you could say that's 1. But say it real calmly. And what you don't want to do is say it in a provocative way, like righteous indignation. What's the matter with you, kid? That's 1, and you're trying to shove it down their throat. You want to do it very calmly. So it could be either one, as you said. It could be an automatic 3 if it's severe enough, or it could be the first one. Sometimes the kids go from 0 to 60 so fast that you're in the 3 category, and they're the 1 and the 2 are useless.
Got it. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Phelan, and thank you all for joining us today. If you know someone who needs to hear this, please feel free to share this video or tag them in the comments below. And if you haven't already, head on over to 123magic.com to get signed up for our weekly newsletter where we send out videos, parenting tips, downloadables, and more. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.